I want us to turn our attention to 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 7 for our meditation this morning. 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 7. But we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. When you look at this 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians, Paul has written more to this church than when you compare to other churches like Philippi or Thessalonica or Colossians. They have got more because they had more problems. 1 Corinthians, the previous letter, if that was about conflict inside the church, a cursory reading will tell us right from chapter 1 of 1 Corinthians, there is struggle inside. Paul's party, Cephas's party, Apollos' party, they are all in one church, but they are not able to get along. That was the issue in 1 Corinthians. Now when you look at 2 Corinthians, it is conflict with the apostle. The first one was conflict inside the church. Now, as a church, they cannot comprehend, understand what is going on with the man of God. The first letter kind of dealt with the fruit of the issue. It was like what came out from a bad tree, symptom of a disease. This comparison, boasting, and divisions, these are symptoms of a deeper issue. 2 Corinthians is not dealing with the fruit or the issue, symptom issues. It is getting to the root problem, 2 Corinthians. What is the root issue? It is a gospel issue. When we have the problem of comparison, competition, not able to get along for Paul, he writes, now you look at gospel, what have you signed up for? That is 2 Corinthians. And when we open this letter, 2 Corinthians, from chapter 1 onwards, we are looking at one of the most passionate, most difficult, deeply pastoral letter of Apostle Paul. But it is often neglected in academia and in church. We hardly get to hear sermons from 2 Corinthians because people get to feel, oh, it's so depressing to see all this. In chapter 4, there is a list of suffering. Chapter 6, there is a list of suffering. Chapter 11, there is an extended list of suffering. It's very depressing. We would rather go and look at some Old Testament narratives and get ourselves encouraged. But I invite you to look at the crux of 2 Corinthians, which is in chapter 4, verse 7. When you look at this letter, the major issue here is Apostle Paul is battered and he is bruised. You are looking at a man chipped and cracked all from outside. The problem is his letters are powerful, but you look at this man, his pitiful presence is unimpressive. There are confusion in the church. There are confusion and complaints about his apostolic ministry. Is he spiritual? That's the question. Is Christ in Apostle Paul? Can you imagine that? He is the one whom God used to bring them to the saving knowledge of Christ. But after a few months and years, they are struggling, looking at Apostle. Really, are you a man of God? We doubt. What happened to this kind of a chaos, a relationship issue with Apostle Paul and his church? Conflicts and sufferings, as it is today, illness, suffering, in the ancient world, it was regularly regarded as signs of divine displeasure. You go through suffering, you go through failure, loss of job, or any such things. In the ancient world, people were quick to pass comment, there is some divine displeasure. Go and do some sacrifice, go and do some worship, give some money, get it right. And these believers who once looked at cross and said, yeah, the world look at it and say it is failure, but we look at it and say there is power, there is wisdom. They had a different attitude towards suffering. They had a different attitude towards Jesus on the cross. The same people in few months looks at Apostle Paul suffering and say, I don't know whether you are a man of God. Their ideas, perspectives changed. They were influenced by the culture, the spirit of the Corinth. Paul did not cover up as some of us. We don't like to talk about our failures, the loss of job, or we didn't crack the entrance exam. Don't tell anyone, don't keep it. Paul was open. Yeah, this is what I'm going through. I'm going through suffering. Body, I'm suffering. Yeah, I was thinking of coming to you, but I could not make it. My travel plans is not happening. He did not cover up. You look at this man, wisdom, strength, honor, power, success is missing. And there you get to the heart of Paul's response in chapter 4, verse 7. I would like to read this verse from the Message Bible as well and want to reflect with you 3 things that I learned from this verse. Eugene Peterson, he writes it this way, chapter 4, 7. If you only look at us, believers, you look at us, apostolic team, you might well miss the brightness. You will miss the brightness. We carry this precious message around in the unadorned clay pots of our ordinary lives. Unadorned, unimpressive. The first lesson that I learned from here is we all should have a correct understanding about the divine call. Otherwise, somewhere along the way, either we will pass wrong judgments on others or we ourselves will struggle. Why I am going through situations like this? What is the divine call? For that, you have to look at this Corinth in a couple of minutes. There is a particular culture in that place, and it's not different from Bangalore. When Paul arrived in Corinth, that city was at the peak of its glory, with around 20 temples and 3 theaters and countless shops, baths, fountains, monuments. You look at the city and its upload, wow, there is pomp and glory, grandeur, majestic city. And what kind of people lived there? Historians come and Strabo, the Greek historian, says mostly they were freedmen. Who are these freedmen in the city? Freedmen were once slaves, oppressive. But along the way, they either got their freedom or purchased their freedom. Most of the people in Corinth are freedmen. They have the story of liberation. Yeah, we were in oppression. We had a master, but now we are free. And they used their skills to gain money. Seneca, a Roman philosopher and statesman, writes, there was a proverbial statement in the first century about the rich. Writing of rich man, Seneca writes, he had the bank account of a freedman. That was like a proverb. Freedmen, they had the story. You give them mic, they say, oh, my grandfather used to struggle. My father used to struggle, but now God has helped me. God has given me money. God has given me success. That is the spirit of Corinth. They were once slaves, but now set free. And they advance through hard work. They are like, we will not give up. We are tough, hard work. With vigor, venture, aggressively, they converted the skills learned while slaves into financial gain, accumulating it because they want to prove, they want to make a statement before others. This line may capture what I am trying to say. In Corinth, perhaps in more than any other city in the first century, social ascent was the goal. Grandfather lived in small. I am 3-bedroom. Now 5-bedroom. Social ascent. I want to come up in life. I am going to pray for bigger, brighter, faster. Come up. Boasting and self-display was the means to get there. Social ascent. How will you get there? You display it. Boasting and self-display was the means to get there. And what is the reward? The reward is personal power and glory. That is how the circle goes. Social ascent was the goal. For that I boast and display, and I get attention, power. People will look at, wow, God has blessed you. God has honored. That is the air of Corinth. That has come to this church. And when they look at Apostle Paul, they are looking at him. There is no eloquence. There is no beauty. There is no power. Hey, he is a failure. Where is Christ in you? That's a question that they are naturally asking. And you know what they said in chapter 1, verse 17 of 2 Corinthians? They are looking at him, man, our Paul, apostle, you cannot even make your travel plans happen. Are you an apostle? In chapter 2, verse 17, they have questions about his preachings. He is looked up as somebody who may change his messages as per situation. In Jerusalem, he will preach one message. Now he preaches another sermon. There is a question on his integrity. And in chapter 3, verse 1, I cannot even imagine they are asking this in 3:1, 2 Corinthians. They are saying, some of you are asking for letters of recommendation. At first, they never asked because they have seen the beauty of the cross. But now they want to see, which Bible college did you study? Who gave you the credential? Which organization are you part of? They are struggling to look at this man as a man sent from God because of the spirit of the world and culture around. The pomp and glory and the grandeur has infiltrated their mind. They look at Paul. Can we have some letters of recommendation to accept you? That's the situation. Chapter 10:10, Paul says, yeah, some of you are saying my letters are weighty, but in person I am unimpressive. Paul says, yes, that's what I am, unimpressive. In chapter 11, 7 through 11, Paul did not collect money from Corinth. And you know what these people talked about? In chapter 11, verse 7 to 11, he did not accept money. And some of them began to say, you know why he did not accept money? Because he has no authority of the apostle. That's why he did not accept money. And then they went on to say in chapter 12:1, he doesn't have visions and revelations, but we see some other ministers. Paul calls them super apostles. Twice he says about super apostles, they have visions, they have this grandeur, they have blessing. You look at them, you feel like following Christ. But you look at Paul, you feel like, hey, this Christ I don't want to follow. Chapter 11, 12 verse 1, he doesn't have vision. And in 12:12, he doesn't have sign of an apostle. 12:16, painful. 12:16, Paul has taken financial advantage. That's what they are saying. In all corners, he is pressed down, shaken, bruised. How he will stand before the congregation and preach another sermon. He is wasting away, nothing to defend himself externally. That is when verse 7 comes. We have this treasure. What was Paul talking about in the previous verses? You know what he is talking about? In chapter 3, verse 7 through 4, verse 6. 3:7, from 3:7 to 4:6. Just before that, 4:7 till 4:6. He is talking about the glory of the gospel. And right after this, 4:8 to 18, he is talking about the power of the gospel. Glory of the gospel, power of the gospel, and in between one verse. But we have this treasure in the jars of clay. My dear people of God, listen carefully. What is Paul saying in the previous verses? Oh, we are ministers of the new covenant. This new covenant is glorious than old covenant. We have turned to Christ, Paul says in 2 Corinthians 3:16. And in Christ our veil is removed, Paul says. And what do we expect of a man who says this superlative, I know Christ, I have turned to Christ? You expect him, I expect him to be successful in every way. That is the whole struggle. He says, I have turned to Christ, my veil is taken off, I have communion with Christ. And in chapter 4, he says in the previous verses, 4:4, You ask Paul, who is there inside of you? Paul would say, he is Jesus, the image of God. Chapter 4, verse 4. In 4:5, he says, Jesus, he is not just a miracle worker. He is not just a guru. He is Lord, he says. And in 4:6, the previous verses present Jesus as the knowledge of God's glory is displayed on the face of Jesus, and in our hearts we host this Jesus. Then it starts, but we have this treasure. People may look at us. Oh, whom are you following? Jesus. Who is Jesus? Lord of Lords. Who is Jesus? King of Kings. The image of God, the Lord, the knowledge of God's glory displayed on the face of Jesus. But when they come near you, they don't see that. But we have. Verse 7 starts with but. There is a contrast. We have all the spiritual high experiences. We pray, we fast, Jesus touch us, Jesus is inside of us. But believers, you look at us externally, we are wasting. Jesus inside, but it is in jars of clay. Jars of clay? What is this jars representing? Vulnerable, open to hurt, weak, meaning not self-sufficient. Fragile, meaning easily broken. Unimpressive. Earthen vessels are both weak and inferior, fragile and expendable. My dear people of God, divine call upon our lives is not to make us gold jars. Many people preach that way. You come to Jesus, everything will be all right. Financial problem solved. Job, health, wealth, everything taken care. Come to Jesus, have a wonderful life. 4:7, Paul says, no, it's not like that. We have this treasure, great experiences of having Christ, but jars of clay. The divine call is to have a communion with Jesus. That is the gospel, my friends. What is the greatest thing that have ever happened in your life and in my life? The greatest thing that ever happened is not I got a job. The greatest thing is not I got healed of cancer. The greatest thing is I was heading to hell, but because of his sacrifice, I am reconciled with Jesus. I am saved. I am adopted. I am redeemed and reconciled with this living God. People may come near you and say, I don't see anything, brother. You are saying that you are reconciled with God. You are redeemed. You are bought with a price. You are adopted to his family. But when I come near you, you look at your children. I don't see God is with you. Take courage today, my friends. When your external man is wasting away, still the treasure remains inside of you. Paul says in 4:7, jars of clay. In 4:10 he says body. Look at 4:10. We are carrying around in our body. Then in 4:11, our mortal flesh. Look at this. These are important things. Gospel is not about beautifying our externals. Body, mortal flesh. No. It's about a treasure inside. When Paul says, our outer man in 4:16, outwardly we are wasting away. Outwardly means what? Our physical life. What people can see at Corinth. Our bank balance, our success, so to speak, from worldly point of view, it's all shrinking. It's all fading away. I want you to listen carefully to the thing that I'm going to say now. All Adam's descendants are wasting away. It's not just with Paul, all of us. It's not obvious when we are young, especially when we can play badminton, when we can play football, go to gym and lift. It's not obvious when somebody look at us and say, you're wasting away, brother. Your body is not getting better. You are wasting away. He will not believe it. But I want all of us to know we are all wasting away. With diet plans, with exercise, supplements, we can improve the quality of life. It may reduce disease risk and slow down some effects of aging, but death rate remains the same, 100%. We are wasting away. 50 to 70 billion cells die in the average adult every day. And when you are young, it recreates, new cells come, but after a certain age, the balance is gone. Our skin wrinkles, our bones weaken, our eyes dim. Paul calls it, we are wasting away. And for Paul, this outward, external, intensified because of persecution as well. It's not just natural decay, it intensified because of the way he was out there ministering. Exposure to several troubles. But Paul is saying, under the skin, we are renewed day by day. Moral transformation is happening because of our communion with Jesus. God wants to speak to some of you specifically, individually today. If your disease is killing you, yes, we have all hope to look up to God and pray, and I believe that Jesus can heal. But in some situation, He allows us to go through this pain and momentary afflictions. Even when our body is wasting away with sickness or with any other challenges today, I want you to know that under the skin, the salvation power, the resurrection power, the gospel power works in us so much so that when people come near us, they don't see pomp and glory, but they see glory of Christ working inside of us. Afflictions, suffering, it can come in spite of your devotion and because of your devotion. Both ways it can come. Some of you might be seated here. Oh, my grandparents were so godly, but why it happened to me? Yes, it can come in spite of your legacy. It can come in spite of your Sunday school training, in spite of it and because of it. But whatever is the reason, I want you to know, divine call is not about gold jars. It's about putting a treasure inside of us. That treasure is the gospel power which is working inside of us. The second lesson when I look at this passage is the divine wisdom. We should know, we should have an understanding, not just about divine call, which is not to make us beautiful, but it is to host, make us prepared to have this treasure inside of us, the divine wisdom. What do you mean by divine wisdom? Chapter 4, verse 1, Paul says, we do not lose heart. 4:16, he says, we do not lose heart. That provokes my thoughts. Paul, you are one man standing against a church, against culture, against worldview. They are all on one side. And you are cornered and you are saying, we do not lose heart. We do not lose heart. What is the secret? There is a secret. Paul was captivated by the divine wisdom which is revealed in Christ. What is that divine wisdom revealed in Christ? In chapter 4, verse 6, he says, "O God, who said, let there be light, that light shines in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of God's glory displayed in the face of Christ." I want you to know, brothers and sisters, when you look at the previous passage, 4:4 talks about God of this age. And verse 6 talks not about God of this age, the small letter G. No, verse 6 talks about God who created, the living, the true God. Verse 4 talks about dummy God. Verse 6 talks about the creator God.
What is the God of this age doing? God of this age is blinding the minds of unbelievers. What is the purpose? They should not look at Christ, the image of God, worship Him, receive Him. That's the purpose of God of this age. But Paul is saying, Genesis 1:3, there was darkness, but light shone. That God shone in our hearts. Now we look at Jesus. We look at Jesus and what do we see? Without divine wisdom, you look at Jesus, you would see in chapter 5, verse 16. From now on, we regard no one from a worldly point of view. Though we once regarded Christ in this way, we regarded Christ in this way, meaning from a worldly point of view, from worldly wisdom, you look at Christ, what do you see? You see, oh, he is from Nazareth. What do you see? You see, yeah, he is Joseph's son. You see, yeah, he is carpenter's son. You see, oh, weak, he is tired sitting. Is he the Son of God? You look at the cross and say, is he the Son of God? He is crying out for help. How can he be God? From a worldly point of view, you look at Jesus, people said he is a Samaritan, he is demon possessed, he cannot be God. Can anything good come from Nazareth? That is all what you will say when you look at Christ. But when the light shines in our hearts, we look at Jesus on the cross and say, oh, this is not mere man. This is God dying on my behalf. This is Son of God. That is because of a miracle. Divine wisdom is enlightened in our hearts. We should have divine wisdom. Understanding of divine call and divine wisdom, which is different from worldly wisdom. And Paul is clinging on to that. And he says, there's one thing that I want all of you to get your mind around. This divine wisdom is paradoxical. What do I mean by paradoxical? It is unexpected, counterintuitive, upside down, and against natural anticipations. When we come near Jesus, you are seeing in Jesus not worldly wisdom, divine wisdom. Incarnation itself is divine wisdom. God in human flesh. Cross is paradox. I see strength on cross, but world sees weakness on cross. I see wisdom on cross, but world sees foolishness on cross. This is counterintuitive, paradoxical, anticipated, not at all. With that understanding, Paul is facing his sufferings. He is saying we do not lose heart because he is seeing himself as part of a big storyline. What is the storyline? It started with Abraham. Abraham called to be the father of nations. You look at this man closely, 75-year-old pagan from Ur, who cannot even have the courage to defend, ensure the well-being of his own wife. Will he be the father of nations? There is divine wisdom. 75-year-old man who lacked courage, yes, will eventually be known as the father of nations. Then you look at carefully, you look at in Old Testament time and time again, God breaks the traditions. In Old Testament, the firstborn is often considered as powerful. But you know whom God chooses? It is the younger sons of Abraham, always. Why? There's divine wisdom running, contradicting to worldly wisdom. They all thought, the firstborn. But you look at carefully, already the precedence is with Abel, Cain, Abel, the younger one there. Isaac is subsequently chosen over his older brother Ishmael. Jacob over his older brother Esau. God's wisdom. Then you look at it carefully, Jacob, he has got 12 sons, and it is the 4th, Judah, and the 11th, Joseph, who experience divine favor. God's wisdom runs contradictory to worldly wisdom. And you look at it carefully. Genesis ends, chapter 48, 13 to 19. Ephraim receives Jacob's blessing rather than his older brother Manasseh. Everything seems to be a different wisdom. Abraham, then Abel, then Jacob, then the one that we are talking about now with Ephraim. Everything seems to be divine wisdom, worldly wisdom in opposition. And you look at Exodus, this weak Moses who said, can you select somebody else? He is the one who is going to be a leader. Yes, that is God's wisdom. And in Numbers, you see the ridiculous speech of a donkey that God finally gets Balaam's attention. Yes, that is God's wisdom. And moving on in Deuteronomy chapter 7, Israel, you are not chosen because you are great, because you are few in number. I am choosing you. That's divine wisdom. And you move on in Joshua, it is a woman and a prostitute Rahab who proves to be the decisive factor in the conquering of Jericho, not the strong ones. It is Rahab. And you look at Judges, it is Gideon, unexpected again. And the next book, Ruth. Oh, when you look at her, we find a poor, husbandless female foreigner, but she is the one. Always, through the scriptures, you see God's wisdom is difficult to comprehend and understand. You need another spirit's work to see what God is doing. Paul is saying, yeah, you look at me, you are looking at me like Abraham, you are looking at me like David, you are looking at me like Moses, unexpected, yeah, but I carry a package that is the treasure of the gospel, that is the treasure of Jesus that I am carrying, and this is not God's accident, it's a pattern that we see throughout the Bible. When I stand in front of you today, I see myself as part of this story. Unexpected, unanticipated. My family members, relatives, friends would say, Joe, he is preaching. Yes, I was not like this. I was shy, timid, very fearful, not wanting to face anybody. One-on-one conversation is fine. But today I see there is grace. There is power. When we are weak, He will prove Himself strong in our lives. That is His wisdom. You look at Gospels, Jesus going around and looking at rabbis, Pharisees, Sadducees. Can I have an appointment with you, Pharisee? I want you to be in my team. I'm only looking at 12 people. You look at those 12 individuals, there is no rabbi. There is no Pharisee. There is no Sadducee. There is no aristocrats. 4 fishermen, 1 zealot, 1 tax collector. All the nobodies are here in Jesus' team. You look at that team and say, these people will make the world new, upside down. Yes, it will happen because it is divine wisdom. The wisdom that we saw on the cross is still working in your life. If you're seated here weak today, if you are seated here with questions today, God has invited you to be part of that story, a divine paradox. God will use you in the midst of your troubles. Even when you are sick in your body, you place your weak hands and pray for the sick. God will work in that person's life. That is the wisdom of God. You look at this carefully, you see, in a world chasing gold, God is still looking for clay. You need to have a clarity about the call. The call is not to make us treasure. He is the treasure. I am just jar of clay. The call is to understand His wisdom. His wisdom is different than our wisdom. Understanding of what is success, what is wealth, what is glory, what is power. He has made the power of the world and wisdom of the world nothing on the cross. There is a new definition of power. There is new definition of wisdom on the cross. That is self-giving, sacrificial life. That is the power. That is the success. Thirdly and lastly, I'm inviting you to look at the divine purpose. There is divine call. There is divine wisdom. Paul is clinging on. He is hanging in there. You ask him, Paul, you feel like giving up? He would say, no, I will not lose heart. I will not lose heart. Because I have treasure. Because I know I am part of divine wisdom. And there is a divine purpose. What is this purpose? To understand the purpose, I want you to look at that word treasure. What is the treasure that Paul is talking about? We have this treasure in the jars of clay. What is this treasure? At least three things are there. One is, it could be Jesus, which is spoken of in chapter 4, verse 4 as the image of God. Chapter 4, 5 as Lord. Chapter 4, verse 6 as the revealer of the knowledge of God's glory. It could be Jesus the treasure. Or it could be gospel. Chapter 4, verse 4, the gospel. Or it could be, as many people suggest, because of even the language similarity. Chapter 4, 1, it says, we have this ministry. And 7, we have this treasure. Many people say it is that ministry that Paul received, the treasure. We have this ministry, 4:1. In 4:7, we have this treasure. All of you who are into ministry, all of us are into some way or the other in ministry, but those of us who are in ministry of proclaiming the word, I want you to know it is by mercy that God has called us and put this treasure inside of us. It's not because of our parents. It's not because of our eloquence or impressive stature or personality. God has invited us, come. It is by mercy that the treasure, the new covenant ministry is put inside of us. And Paul is saying, divine purpose, meaning this is deliberately. God is doing this deliberately. What is he doing deliberate? When I walk around, when people come and see my family, when they see my house or whatever, they should not be attracted to me. They should only look at the treasure. That is the divine purpose. Divine call is a radical call. Divine wisdom is a paradoxical wisdom. Divine purpose is not about getting people attracted to us. Treasure is deliberately put in jars of clay so that people will not look at jars of clay and say, wow, great. The more cracks, the more treasure will be visible to others. There was this man, Sir Oliver Franks. He was the British ambassador to the United States. This was right after the Second World War. The Cold War was happening. All sensitive information he is passing on from Washington back to Britain. Sir Oliver Franks, he was very careful about how he is passing on sensitive informations. He uses phone. At times when there is a little more sensitive information, he would use diplomatic bags. But it is said about this man, Sir Oliver, the most sensitive informations, he will not use phone. He will not use diplomatic bag. He would use ordinary envelope. Put the letter inside, send it. Why is it like that? The most sensitive information between US and Britain is put in ordinary envelope, sent. There is a reason. It is hidden in plain sight. Diplomatic bag, everybody knows here, something is going on. Something is going. An ordinary envelope, nobody will really look at it and say there is something going on now. A clay jar was ordinary and unassuming. Unlikely to attract attention. That's the divine purpose. Divine purpose of making some of us weak and vulnerable and unimpressive is so that people will not be attracted to us. They will only be attracted to the one inside of us. Sir Oliver Franks says, let this envelope go. Nobody looks at this ordinary envelope, but inside has the most sensitive information. Some of you are like that ordinary envelope. Nobody would look at it and say, very impressive, great man. People look at it and say, you have the treasure. Yes, you are the man. You are the woman. If you are seated here today, broken, discouraged, having questions about maybe your dear ones have passed away, untimely death, you cannot even comprehend it even today, or I don't know, financial or health or whatever. You feel here that it is all shaky around of me. I want you to believe there is a purpose there. Even when you are weak, as we sing, even when I see that you're not working, but you never stop working. You are writing your letter. The treasure is passed on through ordinary clay jars. We are cracked pots, but the light shines through the cracks.